let's get into the story of a musician named Kid Thomas. Now, see, Kid Thomas was born in Sturgis, Mississippi, and later raised in Chicago. Now, around the 1950s in Chicago, the blues was the top genre of music, and he started off playing the harmonica after meeting Little Willie Smith, also known as Big Eyes, who played drums for Muddy Waters. And once they hooked up, Kid Thomas started performing at clubs with Muddy Waters and other legendary blues artists like Bo Diddley, Elmore James, Howlin' Wolf, and sometimes he even replaced harmonica legend Little Walter when Little Walter was too drunk to make it on stage. I'm gonna have to watch that movie again, man. Cadillac Records again now. I love that movie. But anyway, now in 1955, right, Kid Thomas signed to the label King Federal Records and released two singles called Wolfpack, and the other one was called The Spell, but the songs really didn't make an impact. But he was still determined though. He was still determined to make it big. So one day at a local diner, he met two guys who had hitchhiked into town all the way from Kansas. And they got to talking or whatever. And Kid Thomas invited them down to come see him perform. When they went to the show, they were blown away by Kid Thomas. So when the two guys went back home to Kansas and started telling everybody how talented he was, they ended up getting him a paid job at a local bar to perform with a band down there in Kansas. So when Kid Thomas got the word to come to Kansas, he was excited. He was with it. But the only problem was he didn't have a car. So to get there, so this is what he did. He stole the car from the guy he was working with at the time, and he headed to Kansas. And the guy he's working for was a pastor too, man. He stole the pastor car. Now in Kansas, right, doing his thing, and at first things was going good in Kansas when he was performing with the band out there. But after a while, him and the band, they fell apart. They ended up breaking up. And then he ended up connecting with another artist named Hound Dog Taylor. And they performed together for a little bit, but they also decided to go their separate ways too. Now, after that, Kid Thomas went back to Chicago. And at the time, the blues music was kind of fading out around the late 1950s because this new genre was taking over called rock and roll. And Chuck Berry and Little Richard was at the forefront at the time. That's when Kid Thomas, he switched his style up and started doing rock and roll music, emulating Little Richard. He was copying Little Richard. And people started calling him the poor man's Little Richard because he wore his hair up like Little Richard did. He wore his hair up high and he screamed a lot on the mic. But see, in Chicago, he was doing that Little Richard stuff in Chicago, but that style wasn't known there yet. It wasn't that popular yet. So the people in Chicago wasn't really feeling him. So he ended up going to the West Coast. He went to California. Now, when he got to Los Angeles, he ended up getting a deal. He signed to Modern Records, who had artists like, they had Richard Berry on there, the Teen Queens, and they had Jesse Belvin. Y'all make sure y'all check out that Jesse Belvin story I did on my channel. That's the Accidental Demise series. That was a good story. So that label had Jesse Belvin and all them, right? Now, he was signed to Modern Records, right? And he released the singles You Are the Angel and Rockin' This Joint Tonight. But those songs really didn't make an impact either. No commercial buzz or anything. Plus the label ended up folding. Now, after that, Kid Thomas took like a 5-year break from doing music, but then he formed another band. He formed a band and he changed his name to Tommy Lewis. And the band name was called Tommy Lewis and the Rhythm Rockers, or sometimes they went by the name Tommy Lewis and the Versatiles. And they would perform at parties and clubs all over Los Angeles. And they did put out a couple songs. The Hurt Is On was one of them. And the other song was called Well Baby Well, but those records kind of flopped too. Now after that, Kid Thomas, he fell back. He fell back from the music business because he had to pay some bills. And he started a lawn care service in Beverly Hills. I mean, he didn't really quit the music business. It was still his dream to become a big time music star, because he would still go and do gigs if somebody offered, but to pay the bills, he would do lawn care, landscaping, cutting grass and stuff. But on March 2nd, 1970, Kid Thomas was shot and killed in front of the courthouse. Now, the story goes, but first, let's take it back some months before, on September 3rd, 1969, right? Now, on that day, Kid Thomas, who was 35 years old at the time, had just finished the lawn care of a client's yard in Beverly Hills, right? Now, he was leaving the house and he was backing up, leaving his client's house, and he accidentally ended up hitting and running over a 10-year-old boy named Ethan Friedman, who was riding his bike. Now, medics were called and they rushed the little boy to the hospital, where he later died from his injuries. And the little boy's family were devastated, man. They was heartbroken. Now, the boy's father wanted the police and the district attorney to file manslaughter charges because, for one, Kid Thomas had 5 driver licenses and 4 of them were fake. And he was charged with manslaughter, but during the trial, the witness that saw the whole incident didn't show up for court. So the district attorney refused to prosecute, citing insufficient evidence. So they let Kid Thomas go. They didn't have enough evidence. And the only thing that happened to Kid Thomas was they revoked his license. So look, right, the boy's father was so angry because, he was mad that he felt that he got away with killing his son. So what he did, this is what the father did. He hired a private investigator to watch every move Kid Thomas made to see if he would still be driving on a revoked license. And you know what? They caught him. They caught him driving. Then they called the police and they arrested him. Now in court for driving without a license, the judge ended up postponing the case until the following month, which made the father very angry. Now he was real mad. He wanted Kid Thomas under the jail. He wasn't going to stop till something happened to Kid Thomas because he felt he got away with killing his 10-year-old son. Now angry, right? The father, because the judge postponed the case. The boy's father waited outside in the parking lot for Kid Thomas and confronted him. And that's when he pulled out a pistol. The boy's father pulled out a pistol and shot him point blank in the head. Wow. And look, Kid Thomas tried to run back towards the court and the police station with the father still behind him, busting shots at him. And Kid Thomas ended up falling to the curb and collapsing. And the father was still shooting, and he accidentally shot a police sergeant in the leg who was standing at the rear door of the station. And that's when the boy's father dropped the gun after that, and he surrendered, and they arrested him. And Kid Thomas was rushed to the hospital, but he later died. Now, as far as the boy's father, right, his name was Eugene K. Friedman. He was charged with first-degree murder and faced the death penalty, and was charged with assault with a deadly weapon in the shooting of a police officer, right? But in court, he testified and told the jury that he believed his son was standing next to him when he confronted Kid Thomas to plead with Kid Thomas to stop driving, and that's why he shot him, to protect his son. Wow. And 2 days later, the jury found Eugene Friedman guilty of the reduced charge of voluntary manslaughter, but acquitted him on the assault with a deadly weapon charge. And the judge placed him on 3 years probation and ordered him to obtain psychiatric treatment. Look, the judge told him to go get a job and not to use weapons or drugs because he doesn't condone violence in any form. And if he had the power to reduce the charge to a misdemeanor, he would do it. Wow. He accidentally killed that little boy, man. It was an accident, man. But, Kid Thomas was 35 years old, man. Sad, man. Y'all stay tuned for more stories, man. And for exclusive content, go to celebrityunderrated/Patreon.